The screen is black. You hear the faint, distorted sound of a child's laughter, echoing just a bit. Suddenly, a security camera feed flickers on. The time stamp in the corner reads 3:14 a.m. A dark, shadowy figure darts across an empty hallway and just vanishes. For centuries, we've told stories of ghosts and spirits, legends passed down through generations. But in our modern world, we have something our ancestors didn't. Cameras, millions of them, recording every second of our lives, and sometimes they capture the impossible. The laughter cuts out, replaced by the low hum of static. Some things just can't be explained. A flicker in the dark, a voice from an empty room. We're at a house that looks pretty unassuming from the outside. Andrew Borden, a wealthy but notoriously cheap property developer, and his wife, Abby, were found bludgeoned to death in their own home. Abby was found first, upstairs in the guest room, the victim of 19 vicious blows from a hatchet-like weapon. An hour later, Andrew's body was discovered downstairs on the sitting room couch, his face mutilated by at least 10 strikes, one of which had split his eyeball in two. But it holds a story so brutal, so infamous, it's been carved into the dark side of American folklore. In the very room where Andrew Borden's body was autopsied, guests have captured strange things in photos and heard disembodied footsteps. But maybe the most terrifying reports come from those who stay in Lizzie's old room. Some have claimed to be choked by an unseen force while lying in bed, a spectral reminder of the rage and secrets that have stained this property forever. The fire alarm is also said to go off for no reason every few months, always at 3 a.m. The reenactments, ghost tours, and overnight stays all seem to stir up the dark energy of the past, keeping the legend of the Borden murders terrifyingly alive. This isn't a planned ghost hunt. It's a random night, captured on a system meant to catch thieves, not spirits. After the footage was shared, former mall employees came forward, confirming the location's strangeness. They shared their own experiences with paranormal activity in the mall, from phantom footsteps in empty hallways to that creepy feeling of being watched. Their stories added another chilling layer of credibility to what the camera saw. Police described Lizzie's behavior on the day of the murders as strangely calm and sure, but the way this figure moves with purpose seems to cast a faint shadow, and even gets a reaction from the man makes it hard to just write off as a technical error. The figure doesn't just pop in and out. It approaches him. It seems to have intent. This isn't a story passed down for 100 years. It's a single moment, frozen in time by a machine, that appears to show a direct encounter with something we can't understand. She claimed she was out in the barn when her father was killed, and that her stepmother had left the house to visit a sick friend. We're heading to San Jose, Costa Rica, to a place that couldn't be more different from a 19th century murder house, a modern shopping mall. On one hand, you've got the Lizzie Borden house, a single, silent piece of footage. There's no backstory, no famous rhyme, just a fleeting, ghostly image that defies a logical explanation. The fear here is raw, immediate, and visual. It's the terror of the unknown, captured by the cold, objective eye of a camera. It's a story steeped in blood, mystery, and over a century of terrifying eyewitness accounts. The weight of its history is immense, a story of betrayal and violence that feels like it's soaked into the floorboards. The fear comes from the story, from knowing what happened in those rooms. But evil and the unexplained aren't just confined to old, dark houses. Sometimes they show up under the cold, sterile glow of fluorescent lights. That story fell apart pretty quickly when Abby's body was found upstairs, or the stark, visual evidence of the mall apparition, where the horror is right there on the screen. What's more frightening? The ghost you're told about, or the one you see for yourself? Let us know what you think in the comments. The guard on duty was just monitoring the feeds when he saw something so unsettling that the video soon went viral. We see a man walking alone toward the exit. The garage is empty, quiet. Suddenly, from the right of the frame, a dark silhouette appears. It's not just a shadow. It has shape. It has depth. It moves with a deliberate, gliding motion, straight for the unsuspecting man. The figure is humanoid but unnaturally dark, like a void in the shape of a person. As it gets closer, the man seems to sense something. He turns his head, just as the figure seems to dissolve, vanishing into thin air right before making contact. The man looks around, confused, but sees nothing. He pauses for a second, a look of unease on his face, before just continuing on his way, totally unaware of what the camera just recorded. To make things even more suspicious, a few days after the murders, A friend saw Lizzie burn in a dress, which she claimed was stained with paint. Down in the basement, police found a couple of hatchets, one with a freshly broken handle. This is the Lizzie Borden house, the site of a savage, unsolved double murder that happened on a sweltering August morning back in 1892. Tonight, we're putting legend up against reality. We'll take a look at the most infamous hauntings in history and compare them to raw, terrifying footage that defies explanation. It's two different kinds of fear, two different kinds of evidence. You decide what's real. The jury, made up entirely of men, just couldn't imagine a woman of her social standing committing such a barbaric act. She walked free, but the house on 2nd Street never did. It became a prison of memory, a hotspot for paranormal energy left behind by that brutal violence, unexplained, unsettling, and captured by ordinary people on ordinary devices. Guests and staff report a whole catalogue of chilling paranormal activity. Many claim to have seen the ghost of an older woman, thought to be Abby Borden, tidying the guest room where she died, only to vanish when they get closer. Some who sleep in that room report a feeling of their bedsheets being pulled tight over them, as if by invisible hands. There are no actors and no special effects, just raw, inexplicable moments. We'll present the evidence, both historical and digital, the stories that have haunted generations and the recordings that haunt us now. By the end of this, you'll be the judge. The legend versus the lens. Prepare yourself, because we're about to begin. So, what truly scares you more? Is it the story of a malevolent spirit? A tale woven through history with gruesome details and eyewitness accounts that make your blood run cold? Or is it the cold, hard, grainy footage of something that simply shouldn't be there? That's the real question we're tackling tonight. We're going to journey into the darkest corners of paranormal history, exploring the bone-chilling legends that have become famous. We'll recreate the terror that witnesses have sworn to for decades. Then, we'll show you something completely different. Authentic footage. Section 1. The famous haunting. The Lizzie Borden house, our first stop on this journey into legendary darkness, brings us to a quiet street in Fall River, Massachusetts. The story is just as grim as the nursery rhyme it inspired. The main suspect was Andrew's youngest daughter, 32-year-old Lizzie Borden. But even with a mountain of circumstantial evidence, Lizzie Borden was acquitted. Today, the Lizzie Borden house is actually a bed and breakfast, inviting anyone brave enough to spend the night. Others hear the phantom sounds of children laughing, believed to be the spirits of 2 kids murdered next door, years before the Bordens even lived there. Section 2. The real evidence. The San Pedro Mall apparition. Now, we're leaving the world of historical legend and stepping into the stark, unforgiving world of digital evidence. The footage we're about to see comes from the San Pedro Mall, captured late one night on a security camera in the parking garage. Here it is. What makes this footage so compelling is that it wasn't supposed to happen. So let's break down what we're seeing. Skeptics might say it's a digital glitch, a video compression artifact, or a clever fake. The you decide moment won, so now it's your turn to be the investigator. On the other hand, you have the San Pedro Mall. Which one is more compelling? The rich, historical terror of the Borden murders, where the horror is built in your imagination. Section 3. The famous haunting. The Lalaurie Mansion for our next case. We're heading to the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans, to a grand, imposing mansion at 1140 Royal Street. From the outside, it looks like a place of wealth and high society. She lived in the mansion with her third husband, Dr. Leonard Louis Nicolas. But under that high society glamour, dark rumors were swirling about her brutal treatment of the enslaved people who worked in her home. Those whispers of cruelty were tragically confirmed on the night of April 10th, 1834, when a fire broke out in the mansion. But behind that stately facade is a history so depraved, so monstrous, that it has earned its reputation as one of America's most haunted houses. Many claim to see the apparitions of tormented figures in the upper windows, their silhouettes flickering in the moonlight. Paranormal investigators who have gotten access have captured disembodied voices crying out in pain and have reported being touched, scratched, and shoved by aggressive, unseen entities. A place designed to contain violence, but which ended up becoming a factory for it. Teams are constantly running paranormal investigations here with cameras, audio recorders, and other gear, and what they capture is deeply disturbing. These were underground isolation cells with no windows, kept in total darkness. Objects are heard dropping from the high catwalks, but when someone checks, nothing is out of place. In one specific cell, cell 48 in Hall, an inmate was supposedly bludgeoned to death. Visitors to this cell have reported their equipment going haywire, fully charged, batteries draining in an instant, only to work perfectly again once they leave the area. The horror is personal, sadistic, and contained within her home. The ghosts are the victims, their eternal torment a direct result of her evil. Strange figures and mists often show up in photos taken near this cell. In this area, investigators report intense feelings of dread and the unnerving feeling of someone standing right next to them in the pitch black. Back in 1692, this small Puritan settlement became the center of one of the most infamous cases of mass hysteria in history, the Salem witch trials. They suffered from fits, contorted their bodies, and cried out in pain. The local doctor couldn't find a physical cause, so he diagnosed them as victims of bewitchment. That one diagnosis lit a spark in a community that was already drowning in fear of the devil, fear of outsiders, and fear of their own neighbors, or the overwhelming data-driven evidence of widespread haunting at the Missouri State Penitentiary. The Witch House, the former home of Judge Jonathan Corwin, is the only structure still standing in Salem with direct ties to the trials. Visitors report cold spots and the feeling of being watched. The old Burying Point Cemetery, where another judge, John Hathorne, is buried, is another hotspot. The building is considered a hotbed for paranormal events. One of the most frequently reported things is the sound of phantom footsteps on the wooden staircase, as if a guard is still making his rounds, trapped in an endless loop. Near the catwalk where a male prisoner tragically fell to his death, visitors have reported sudden, intense cold spots and the distinct, unsettling sound of heavy breathing right next to their ear. People claim to see the ghost of Giles Corey, the man who was pressed to death, wandering among the old headstones. It's a town-wide tragedy driven by hysteria, where the ghosts are martyrs, symbols of a great injustice. The fear is atmospheric, historical, and tied to the weight of a horrific moment in American history. The main security door that separates the cell block from the gift shop has been known to fly open with incredible force, as if an unseen entity is desperate to escape. We've descended into the horrific torture chamber of the little mansion and walked the haunted cell blocks of two infamous prisons. We've stood on the haunted ground of Salem and stared into the darkness of its past, a place of contained desperation where the reported phenomena are specific, recurring, and personal. The legendary hauntings, rich with history, story, and the power of human testimony passed down through the ages. Your opinions are what fuel this debate. Don't forget to like this video. And if you want to explore more showdowns between real evidence and famous haunt, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There's a world of darkness out there, and we've only just scratched the surface. Stay vigilant and question everything. And the unfiltered evidence of the modern world, glitches in reality caught by cameras and audio recorders? Or is it the undeniable, inexplicable proof that a camera can sometimes capture what the human eye was never meant to see? The legend, or the lens, or the intimate, aggressive, and well-documented paranormal activity inside the Cripple Creek jail? Is a ghost story more powerful when it's big enough to haunt a whole town, or when it's close enough to breathe down your neck? Let us know in the comments. The fear here comes from direct, interactive experiences, doors flying open, disembodied breathing, and apparitions making themselves known to the living. A former caretaker reported a chilling encounter. One evening while she was closing up, she saw a man's face looking in at her through a window. When she went to open the door, thinking it was a late visitor, the man was gone. Based on her description, former law enforcement officers identified the apparition as one of the old nighttime guards. The evidence from Cripple Creek Jail is a chilling mix of audio, visual, and physical events, suggesting that this small-town jail is still very much occupied. And on Gallows Hill, where the hangings took place, visitors report hearing disembodied whispers on the wind and seeing strange, flickering lights in the trees. The haunting of Salem is unique because it isn't tied to one ghost, but to the collective soul of a community torn apart by fear and injustice. The land itself seems to cry out, haunted by the memory of a dark and terrible time. Is the story of one great evil scarier than the collective misery of thousands? Cast your vote in the comments. The first people accused were a beggar, a woman who rarely went to church, and the Paris's enslaved woman. Welcome to Cripple Creek, Colorado, a former gold rush town with a violent past. We're focusing on the old Teller County Jail, which is now the Outlaws and Laumen Jail Museum. Investigators and psychics claim to have communicated with her, and she insists she's still there, watching over her female prisoners. It operated from 1901 to 1991, housing countless desperate people, and many believe the spirits of both inmates and guards are still doing their time. Today, the entire town is considered a haunted landscape. It's said the restless spirits of the 19 innocent people who were executed and the several others who died in the filthy prisons still roam Salem, demanding their innocence be known. Under intense questioning, Tituba confessed to witchcraft, and in her confession, she pointed fingers at others. The spark became a wildfire. Accusations flew, and soon, over 150 men, women, and even a 4-year-old child were locked up on charges of witchcraft. The phantom smells of cigarette smoke and unwashed bodies are also commonly reported in areas where no one is present. This made any defense impossible. Bridget Bishop was the first to be found guilty. She was hanged on June 10th. Over the next few months, 80 and others would follow her to the gallows on Gallows Hill. One elderly man, Giles Corey, refused to enter a plea and was crushed to death under heavy stones. The sheer volume and consistency of the evidence gathered here by so many different people over the years is staggering. It's not just one unexplained event, it's a constant barrage of paranormal phenomena in a place saturated with the misery of thousands of souls. The horror here is systemic. The suffering of thousands of inmates over 150 years. The evidence isn't a single story, but a mountain of data VPs, photos, physical events, and personal experiences collected by hundreds of different investigators. This isn't just a haunted prison. It feels like a living testament to its violent past, where inmates who died within its walls might just be serving their time forever. Shadow figures are frequently seen darting down the dark hallways, but it's the audio evidence that's often the most chilling. Electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, are captured here all the time. These are disembodied voices, ones you can't hear at the time of recording, but they show up clearly on playback. Voices have been recorded growling, crying, and whispering warnings to get out. We're going to Jefferson City, Missouri, to the Missouri State Penitentiary. It was decommissioned in 2004 after 168 years of operation, and it was once nicknamed the bloodiest 47 acres in America. The pain, fear, and violence that soaked into these grounds for over a century and a half have turned it into a world-renowned paranormal hotspot. The very air in the mansion is said to feel heavy and oppressive, like a suffocating blanket of misery and rage. The terror of the Lalaurie mansion isn't just a ghost story. It's a monument to real-life human evil, and the belief that such profound suffering can leave a permanent, violent stain on a place. Chained in the kitchen was the cook, a 70-year-old woman who confessed she started the fire as a desperate suicide attempt. They eventually made their way to Paris, where she is believed to have died years later. The house on Royal Street, however, was left to bear the eternal scars of her evil. The building you see today was reconstructed in 1838, but it's believed the tormented spirits of those who suffered and died there never, ever left. She led the rescuers to a hidden, locked room in the attic. What they found inside was a chamber of horrors beyond anyone's worst nightmare. 7 enslaved people were discovered, suspended by their necks, their limbs stretched and torn. They had been starved, beaten, and grotesquely mutilated in what looked like twisted, sadistic experiments. This is the Lalaurie Mansion, the former home of Madame Delphine. In the early 1830s, Madame Lalaurie was a celebrated sort, famous for her beauty and the lavish parties she threw. When firefighters and neighbors rushed in to help, they made a horrific discovery. When news of the torture chamber got out, an enraged mob stormed the mansion. But Madame Lalaurie and her husband had already fled, escaping justice. For nearly 2 centuries, the mansion has been a hotbed of paranormal activity. Later, owners and tenants have reported endless torment. One tenant was murdered shortly after the house was turned into apartments. When it was used as an all-girls school, students reported being physically assaulted by an unseen force. Visitors on the street outside report hearing agonizing shrieks and moans coming from the empty building. Section 4. The real evidence. The ghosts of Missouri State Penitentiary. Now, let's shift from a house of private horrors to a place of public punishment. Unlike a single piece of footage, the evidence from Missouri State Penitentiary is a huge, terrifying collection of experiences from ghost hunters, tour guides, and visitors. One of the most active spots is a section known as the dungeon in Hall A. Then there's the physical activity. Heavy, solid steel cell doors have been filmed slamming shut all on their own. Another well-documented ghost is a figure seen near the old control room, which rushes past visitors as a disorienting blur. The you decide moment too. This brings us to our second decision. On one side, we have the legend of the Lalaurie Mansion, a story of unbelievable cruelty carried out by one woman. Then, we have the Missouri State Penitentiary, a sprawling complex of institutional despair. Which one resonates more deeply with you? The focused, gothic terror of a single, monstrous person in the Lalaurie Mansion. Section 5. The famous haunting. The Salem witch trials, our final journey into legend, takes us to a place where the horror wasn't just in one house, but consumed an entire community. Salem must. The nightmare kicked off in January of 1692, when the daughter and niece of Reverend Samuel Parris fell mysteriously ill. The afflicted girls were pressured to name who was tormenting them, and they did. A special court was set up to hear the cases, and it accepted something called spectral evidence, testimony from the afflicted who claimed the accused person as invisible spirit was attacking them. Although the trials ended within a year, the town of Salem was forever marked by the tragedy. Locations tied to the trials, paranormal epicenters. Section 6. The real evidence. The Cripple Creek Jail for our final piece of evidence. We're traveling to another place forged from lawlessness and desperation, this time in the American West. Like the Missouri Penitentiary, the evidence here is a collection of consistent, unsettling reports from staff and visitors over many years. The jail is said to have several resident ghosts. One is a female jailer named Rosie, whose presence is strongly felt in her old sleeping quarters on the second floor. In the men's cell block on the first floor, dark shadow masseurs are often seen moving around, especially near the last two cells. But maybe the most startling evidence involves direct interaction. You decide. Moment 3, and that brings us to our final comparison. On one side, the historical haunting of Salem. On the other side, we have the raw evidence from the Cripple Creek Jail. What do you find more terrifying? The vast, historical sorrow of the Salem witch trials, where an entire town is haunted by its past. Tonight, we've journeyed from the blood-soaked floors of the Lizzie Borden house to the sterile hallways of a Costa Rican mall. We've shown you two very different types of terror, but the final verdict isn't ours to give. It's yours. Call to action. What truly chills you to the bone? Is it the power of a story, a legend so terrifying it has stood the test of time? If this journey into the unknown has sparked your curiosity or sent a shiver down your spine, please let us know in the comments which case you found the most compelling.